Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very special guest coming right up who's none other than Dr. Anita-Sanchez. Now, many of you remember Dr. Sanchez. She was on our show before to talk about her new book, The 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. And she's here today to talk to us about positive image to positive action. Now, Dr. Anita-Sanchez is a published author, consultant, trainer, and executive coach who has worked with tens of thousands of global leaders and teams around the world. She specializes in indigenous wisdom, diversity and inclusion, leadership, culture, and promoting positive change in our world. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Anita-Sanchez.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back, Marianne.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you back. I just found your book, The 4 Sacred Gifts, so profound. I could not wait for us to have another talk.
Oh, good. I'm glad. That's the kind of response I'm getting across the country and actually in other parts of the world. I'm so delighted. That's what the Indigenous elders and I both want is, we all need these different ways and tools to help us live the best life because this counts. We all matter.
Well, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because, I know that you come from this just, beautiful background where you look at life in such a different way. And I'd love for you to expand upon appreciation for us because I think a lot of times it could get a lot of lip service or people aren't really sure what that means. So I'd love for you to share with us what does it mean to appreciate?
Yes. Well, I think if you probably to look it up, you would just find appreciate means to go up in value. And, of course, people usually think of value related to money. And that's all good. Nothing wrong with that. However, it's far more expansive with Indigenous people that to appreciate is to really be in right relationship with yourself and others. That's other people as well as nature. And in that appreciation, understanding that, the fullness, the joy, being, it's like a mirror of ourselves that we're seeing all the time. So that's when we talk about the hoop of life, that we're all connected to that. So to appreciate is to really embrace the whole system of life that we're a part of, both the economic, ecological, human terms, in all different ways, the fabric of ourselves, our relationships, in organizations, and in the larger world.
Well, and so I love how you just kind of interweave this ancient knowledge into modern life and how we can use these concepts to make our lives better. And it always seems that, a lot of us are looking for the latest, best thing, when a lot of times all we do is have to return to ancient wisdom.
Yes, that's really true. And I find that, because I do have a PhD and I love learning and I love systems and modern science and psychology and all of that. So it's not that we want to separate that, but what we understand is that when we look at the different wisdom traditions around the world, many of them, if not all of them, have already been showing us and telling us some of the new science things that are coming up that we're now finding out about. So, and one of those, of course, is what we want to talk about, positive image to positive action. That whole arena is, I just love it because not that Indigenous wisdom elders need affirming, but it just tells me that this is already inside of all of us. And we can also be grateful that science is finding ways with new technology to affirm that, to say, yes, this is true. We can choose to be the way we want to be in the world, despite all the difficulties that can occur.
Well, that's got to offer a lot of people such great hope, because a lot of times you hear often people, well, that's just the way that person is, without really, it seems like a resignation in some ways of being able to be better.
Yes, I understand what you say. So as you said that, I was thinking about elders, just period elders, not only Indigenous elders, but non-Indigenous elders, and they're all important. So this whole, in my formal work life, obviously the indigenous wisdom came along with me, but even the leaders, the elders in other traditions, so in psychology, There was this amazing man, Marianne, you'd love reading his work if you haven't already, Martin Seligman. He was the past president of the American Psychological Association. But back in the 80s and early 90s, he decided to go back and look at 30 years of psychology journals and to see what was in there, what we were studying. And so what he looked at that, this is kind of depressing, 45,000 studies on depression and only 400 studies on joy. And so when the rest of us kind of think, oh, that's just the way they are because really things are difficult and pretty depressing when we really look at all the facts. And, well, even how we were studying ourselves and researchers were looking at depression instead of joy. And so what he coined back in 1991, which set off a whole lot of more research on wellness and the power of joy and the power of positive images, was this whole learned optimism. That this is something we learn to do, we can choose to do. Now, that I love that he came upon that. What the elders were teaching us in the different traditions is this is something that we're actually born with, but that we have to keep the practice alive of focusing on what it is we want to create and what is life-giving and how we're part of the seasons and nature and stuff. So I just love how these all weave together.
And so is that what ancient, like indigenous wisdom is telling us about focusing on what's life-giving?
Yes. And to understand, now they do that. When I say that, yes, I obviously don't know all the different wisdom traditions around the world, but I do from my work in my book know of elders from different parts of the world and different traditions. And everyone in their own different ways of how they do medicine. It could be in meditating to get centered. It may be in dance or chant. It could be just how to be in circle and community. But all of them in doing that is about understanding our connection. But in understanding that, too, is to also be aware there's seasons. So if the expectation is that we're going to be, out of our mind, I don't want to use the word joyful because that's just sort of like, only everything's positive, like Pollyanna-ish. Well, no. However, even when there are difficulties, we are able to look within that and what is the learning for us. So we can get really sad that it's wintertime and, I like flowers more and I can't have flowers right now if you live where there's 4 seasons. However, what's happening to the earth, in that dormant period is really important. And then when the spring comes and those buds get fed with that snow that has gone deep into the earth, and then we go through the whole cycle again. And it's to understand that even for ourselves, we will have emotions, but they can move. Just as how we use our different senses and how we see the world, those can change and we can choose to have those focus on the positive, on what will be, as I keep saying, and I hope other people adopt this, what is life-giving? Because even though that might not immediately come to like life-giving, it's the kind of thing that elders say that I think is quite positively provocative, like, wow, I want to be life-giving to myself and to others. I obviously don't want to be a Debbie Downer or causing needless suffering.
Well, and I probably got the cart before the horse a little bit here, but so excuse me if I did, but I know there's in positive psychology, it's called appreciative inquiry. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's one of the arenas that I use a great deal and really took hold of because it was weaved so well with indigenous wisdom and because it had such practical application in organizations and leadership. So I'd love to tell you a couple stories.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the one that's up front for me, but it's not the historical. So I'm putting the cart before the horse or whatever it is too. But I just want to tell the one that's really dear to me, which is back in 2005, 2006, a high-tech client of mine had a product. They were about a $25 billion operation, and their product was becoming a commodity. And they also saw the people just not having the kind of energy that is typical of the culture in this organization. So they brought us along, and we talked to them about using positive psychology, that it matters what images you have, will either help pull you towards positive action or help, unfortunately not help, but keep you in a paralysis or in a negative kind of direction. So that was appreciative inquiry, which is what you focus on matters. The questions you ask are really critical. So like Seligman found that, asking questions about depression, well, great, we're going to learn about depression, but why aren't we asking questions about joy where we can look at well-being and replicate that? Well, in this high-tech organization, we did this process called Igniting Your Leadership all over the world in their different operations in different parts of the world. And we focused on the positive. We focused on what things worked well, what made for a great sale, what was it that their gifts, and how could they bring them forward, how had they. So we're looking at all the different ways of when it worked well, and had these images in their mind just exploding, really. And what they found is that sales of $1 million, $2 million, it could take anywhere from a year to year and a half to make with a new client that kind of sale. What they were finding that those sales began to start happening in 4 months to 6 months. I'm talking about a flat market where their product is becoming more like a commodity, and everyone was getting really excited. And lo and behold, in a year, what happened is they went from being a $25 billion operation to a $29 billion operation. And the leadership and at all levels, the people in this 19,000-person organization, attributed a lot of this to, well, we just released something in ourselves. What was that? And we taught them about it. So how to help yourselves to choose to focus on the positive image and move forward. So that was a really great success story because, one, if you're looking at it organizationally, monetarily, well, huge success. But when you talk to the people, that's what just makes my heart expand. They talked about not only increasing their relationships and their ability to innovate and be creative with each other, but at home, they found that this awakening themselves, they took it back into their homes with their partners and their children and their communities, and it just ignited so many positive things happening everywhere. So that's the kind of thing that appreciative inquiry, focusing on what gives life to oneself, to our systems, or the organizations and our communities, and leading with the positive kind of question, not, again, purposely positive, to get at what it is that we want to create. I love that story.
I love it too, because it really puts into, it really clearly outlines how it can be used in business, when a lot of times people are thinking about using this in their own lives.
Yes, you can use it in, well, we're human beings, so wherever we're by ourselves or in pairs or in larger communities, we create these systems. And we talk about them as almost they're separate than these are, organizations, these buildings and stuff. But what brings life to it? What is making all this happening is people and their creativity. So I think the really basic when we get to this appreciative inquiry, if you're going to use a positive psychology methodology or way of being in philosophy, is they're basically two ways of being in the world that leaders need to look at. And that's more of a problem solving, which is a wonderful approach where, you identify the problem, we really study it, we look at the root cause of failure, of why it doesn't work, this problem, what's happening. We brainstorm solutions, and then we develop some action plans, and then we evaluate it. Well, all of us have been taught that. That's a problem-solving methodology. Really great. Has some limitations when we're talking about human beings. And that's what our elders talked about, is like, be careful, because the human beings, there's a whole other level of understanding and complexity. In appreciative inquiry, instead of identifying the problem and seeing the world as organizations are problems to solve, people are problems to be solved, in appreciative inquiry, we first look at, well, what is working? What gives life? Discovering what is right now. So even in the worst situations, there's something that's working well. So, and then we go from that and imagine what might be possible. And then we determine what should be, And then we begin moving forward and it happens very quickly, because once you get excited about a vision and a possibility, especially in a group of people, what could be, then you start getting into action. In this metaphor, rather than organizations and peoples or problems to be solved, it's organizations and people are treasure chests filled with potential and mysteries of what we could behold if we really allowed those different gifts and things to open up. So it's so, as you can hear from our conversation before, it so fits with indigenous wisdom traditions, because, again, we're talking about people. Many of the indigenous groups around the world were actually targeted for genocide in different situations, in different environments around the world. And yet these are the very people, even though they may have lost their land and lost part of their tribe, some really horrific things, we're still here all over the world, and we're still focusing on, okay, what gives life? Because we really see that as some of the basic truth. And so it's so delightful to see science coming up with some of the very same thing.
Well, and I love how passionate you are about that, and you can feel, from here, I can just feel the energy that you bring to this discussion. So it's no wonder that you have corporations clamoring to work with you, because of because you really do put it in a way where it's like you can feel that it's, we're looking for the value in each situation with each person, as opposed to, okay, let's go and, start filling out this little checklist of good and bad,
Yeah, and some people will think that, and that's why I use the word Pollyanna, well, you're just being, and like you even said, you're just one of those people, one of those exceptions that's very positive, or it's Pollyanna-ish. But look, what we've known for some time, just think of even medicine. We know that, when new drugs come out, they have to, of course, test them, and then eventually they test them on human beings. And there's a funny, strange, different language. There'll be more scientific language, but I call it funny and strange phenomenon that keeps coming up. We can test medicine on someone who has the very same illness, and some of them get the medicine, and some of them get the placebo, which is generally just a sugar pill. And what do we find time after time? About 30% of the people taking the placebo get well. And it's unexplainable. Well, wait a minute, they didn't take the medicine, where we may have had 80, 90, even higher percent who got well taking the actual medicine. But this other group, and when they go in to study that, what do they find out? It's the placebo effect is what they find is they find out that these people generally have a positive outlook. That is the inner dialogue in their head. We all have that little person in your head who's talking to you, who's either telling you, yes, go for it, you can do it, learn, it's possible, take baby steps. And then we have those that say, oh, that's just ridiculous. You can't do that. You've never done that before. Oh, this is a horrible disease. How am I going to get well? Well, the people whose inner dialogue was, well, I have a really good doctor, or this is a great hospital. These nurses are really taking care of me, and they have this whole inner positive image going on that they're going to get well. That is the part of the placebo effect. So what we now find in places like even health maintenance organizations, large ones, and I'll go ahead and name one because Kaiser, they years ago, in learning about all this, began giving people, I'm dating how long ago, they gave people CDs before they were going into surgery. And they go, listen to this, and listen to it after your surgery. And all of it was about really reinforcing positive imagery, because what they found is post-surgery recovery happened 50% faster by people who were focusing on the positive images of health, being in positive action, reducing that negative self-talk. Instead, it was much more affirmative. And who wouldn't among us not choose to have that kind of positive image to positive action? If it meant we're going to heal 50% faster. So you take that, Marianne, and look at that in the workplace and go, okay, we can deal with the problem, but it's how we focus. We can focus on burnout, people not engaged, or we can focus on what does lively engagement look like? What does it mean to go to work and have it be an expression of love? I mean, that, like, people's heads turn and go, wow, if I went to work and my work is an expression of love, that puts on a whole bunch of different images. And the pull for action then is a very positive thing, which ends up in great results for themselves as well as the organization.
You can just hear people putting on the mental brakes going, what? How can we have that kind of...
Exactly. We all want it, right? And that's what you do in your work, too, is that's what we're inciting here. Like, and I'm saying inciting in a positive way. We're inviting these life-giving kind of things to occur. And we know now through science, this is what makes the elders smile, too, because they always said, be careful of what you say, be careful of what you even think, because it's already gone out into the world and it has an impact.
Well, on this note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Anita-Sanchez, author of The 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with Dr. Anita-Sanchez, author of The 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. So, Dr. Sanchez, before we left for break, we were discussing positive image to positive action and how this can take place in our lives. What does science tell us about how the positive or negative thoughts that we have daily impact our lives?
Well, now we know from science that, in fact, that is the case. That if we're having images of this is going to be wrong and stress and all the negative things that could happen, we're setting off in our brain to set off these cortisol, which is a good hormone, in moderation. But if we're stressed and, because it's to get us into action, but if time our cell phone goes off or, oh my gosh, my email list is so big, what I have to get back to the email messages and all this stuff, we're just having this cortisol pumping like crazy, and it's negative. It's hurting our bodies. It's hurting our organs. We're beginning to see heart problems and stuff. As opposed to, we have the happy hormone going off, and that is a very different thing. And when we have that go off, then we can see that people are the oxytocin, the love hormone, what happens is then we see that we have these really bursts of energy, but they're positive. It's sort of a calm but expanding kind of thing. We have more clarity in thinking. And so we want to have more of those positive oxytocin, love hormone going off. And that's why lately, Marianne, I've been saying to people, and it's actually a quote from William James, a philosopher, who said, work is an expression of love. What if we just made that true instead of, oh my gosh, it's Sunday night, I got to go to work tomorrow. Or a child, oh my gosh, it's Sunday night, tomorrow I have to go sit still in school for 8 hours, with the exception of recess. So it's like, how do we support ourselves and each other to make this be a place where we are how we're meant to be, which is in harmony, happiness, and joy. Able, coming from that place, to handle the stresses, because those will always come up. We're human. Those are going to come about. And you and I were just talking about that for a minute. I remember saying you were complimenting me, Marianne. If you remember what you were complimenting about, how quickly I could.
Oh, well, I have so many just fabulous and complimentary thoughts about you and your work. It could be any number of things.
Oh, okay. Well, you were just saying, you just naturally, when negative things happen, we were talking about losing people, death or illnesses and things that happen that are part of life. And that those are difficult. Or you don't get the promotion you wanted, or your child doesn't get into the school they wanted, or all the different things that could happen. The paycheck's not big enough. We're not going to have meat. We're not going to have protein. We're going to have something less. Whatever it is that what happens when you do this practice of positive image to positive action, of appreciative inquiry, of valuing what is, the lightness, even in the darkness, just doing that, is that we bounce back faster. It's what we call resiliency. We become more resilient. So it's not that hard things aren't going to happen. That is unicorn talk. And a part of me would love to have unicorns. However, we don't have to stay in the depression like Dr. Selling. We're like, why aren't we studying joy? And the more we study joy, the more joy there is. And the more we study engagement, positive engagement, people being treated with dignity at work, creating space for people to bring their gifts, we get more innovation. Why wouldn't we want to do more of that instead of, totally focusing on the negative, the problem, the root cause of failure? Instead, let's look at the root cause of success, and let's go that way, gang. That's the way I want to go, is the root cause of success.
And is that what you do when you work to support like organizations and businesses? You use like the indigenous wisdom and kind of just like the modern science to bring that all in together?
Yes, I do. I feel like, and I know there must be a lot of your listeners like this. I think there are many of us who feel like we're bridge people. Like it doesn't make sense to talk about past, present, future. It's like Einstein. Einstein's whole theory is these are all happening at once. And I think some of us are like that in that. So I've always been a bridge because I love my indigenous grandmother, my Aztecan grandmother, and then the Osage, and then the world just kept expanding here in Colorado, and so many more elders, the Lakota and Diné people, Navajo, and it's been a gift. They've been so generous to me in sharing the wisdom and taking me in as family, even though I'm not their specific tribe. And then I've also had the good fortune of getting my PhD and studying all the science. So as that all, I took the indigenous wisdom is that whenever we look at separateness, caution, because it probably is an illusion, because even though they seem worlds apart or very different, there is connection. So what I do a lot is helping individuals and the systems they create, the teams and the organizations, look at life-giving connections. I use lots of different methodologies. And this is one that you can tell from my voice, I love introducing people to appreciative inquiry. Even if they don't go the whole route like this high-tech company did or many, many other organizations have, if they can just see, is I being problem-focused or am I being appreciative? I get to choose.
Yeah.
And just knowing that, I have a choice. And then whichever you choose. But then you know it's there, right? Because we can't do something if we don't know it's there. And it's so a part of us.
Well, and it's interesting. So when companies and businesses, they have like a certain thread of something going through their business that they don't know how to resolve, and it could be detached. Like the people that are working for them feel detached and don't feel like they're part of the team. It must be kind of like a puzzle for you to work with them and see how you can bring that all together, because I love how you just quoted how everything is connected.
It is absolutely connected. And Peter Drucker, who, of course, lots of people know his work, the ability, he talks about leadership as the ability to recognize and align strengths towards a purpose, a vision, in such a way that weaknesses become irrelevant. So there are many different arenas that already pointed to that, but it's about pulling those together, and that's with the indigenous wisdom, that we're one hoop of life. We think because our mind gets wound like a crazy wheel just spinning all the time, but that we fail to remember that sometimes, that we are all connected. And so it is a joy to do that. But I want to also say, and this is not false humility, I have a role to play in this. But the reality is, once I open up that treasure chest, I have to just step back, because it is amazing what people do. I had no idea what this sales team was going to do, make these sales so quickly. Or this group in R&D who I took this process in, and they were, they create amazing things, but they also get separate in terms of they're different and who's more important in the R&D section and that. But when they began using appreciative inquiry, they started having lunches together on Fridays. And then they began talking, and they began talking about what they were going to do. And Marianne, this is a great image. What we didn't know when we worked with them is one of the call to action things, and they went through this whole process together. And then we asked them one commitment, a positive life-giving commitment. We gave them these pictures of a brick, and they wrote in their commitment. And there was about 1,000 people, and they put it on the wall, their commitment, with their name signed at it, between their research labs and the cafeteria. What we didn't know is within 3 days, I started getting calls from the HR people who go, "You won't believe this. I'm sending you a picture. They were already getting their results. They were going and copying and making a new brick and putting up new commitments. And this wall was getting it was huge, of bricks with all their commitments, their wall of commitment, And even it became so amazing that the CEO of this large corporation flew in to just see this for himself. And the things, the different kinds of products and things, ideas that were coming out were just incredible. So I want to let people know that, yes, we need each other. So sometimes we need someone who's aware of this, whether it's an indigenous elder or with someone like you or me who study all these and apply them in our life so we can really know what works and doesn't. You might need us a little lightning, but it's there. It's wanting to be free, just like that placebo, that person who's ill and not knowing that they got the sugar pill and not everything. They want to be well. It is our immune system kicking in when it is not doing well, is sick. It wants to do well, and that's true of our systems. It's when we work against that makes it very difficult for that life-giving system inside ourselves, in the groups of us, and in our whole organizations to take hold. But we can make a choice to let it happen, just set it loose.
Well, obviously the CEO of that corporation could feel the energy from where he was at, she was at, to come out and view what was going on, because it was making such an impact and they were having such positive results from that. And it's interesting, a lot of times it's, having somebody like you and coming out that points to, hey, we need to start looking at this in a new light.
Yes, it's absolutely true. I would like to, if I could just name a few steps here so that anybody listening, like, well, how do I do this appreciative inquiry? It's basic. It's a pretty simple 5-step model. first you look at what you want to focus on. So it could be being healthy. It could be having, happy engagement of the employees, or it could be, clients are, customers are satisfied beyond belief. That's what, and then you go into 4 things. There are 4 Ds. Discovery. So you begin looking and asking questions of, wow, what's happening when it's working well? So what's happening if a customer is satisfied? Let's say you have miserable customer satisfaction rate. Let's say it's like horrible. It's like 45% or 55% or 65%. Rather than studying the ones like what made it awful, study that other percent of what made it working well for them. And they'll tell you things. So I'll put it in a story form. So what they would do in the discovery is what we found in one of these AI processes where it was a car dealership. And nobody likes to go buy a car, right? But this car dealership was doing really great, and they wanted to do even better. But they hired some consultants who came in and talked about all the problems and blah, 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 and they posted it up on the walls of these dealerships all over. And you know what happened? Their customer satisfaction rates went even lower. They went, what is this?
Oh.
Then they learned about appreciative inquiry. A couple of consultants went in again. Said, let's not only not look at the problem, let's look at those people who said that they had a great satisfaction customer experience. And let's not just have consultants study that. Let's have your own people look at that so that it's embedded in them. And then posters went up with all the things that worked well. Well, what worked well is fresh coffee was there. They didn't let the coffee be there more than 2 hours. Sometimes they would have in some of these places a flower. Man or a woman come in, they'd give them a flower on their departure. When they could, they would drive them back to their workplace or where they were their car. That was getting a car repaired. I'm going to that focus because there was a new car sales part too. But when you look at that, so discovering what works, and then from their dream, what would be possible for us to even get our customer satisfaction even higher? So they began dreaming together and post all that would look like. Then you take the good things of what's working with the dream, and then you go start moving into action, designing what you want to do. And action happens so fast, Marianne. How people do long strategic plans, and I'm all for strategic plans, but the whole thing can move a lot faster if you put it in the hearts and the hands and the minds of the people, rather than just on high from the executive going down or from external experts. So in this whole process is about engaging everyone. So when you're engaging it for yourself, folks, look at what is the question and put it in an affirmative, put it in the positive, discover what is working, even if it's just one thing, just that, and then dream a little bit. Put away the cell phone and the computer, just dream a little bit, and then look at what is it that I would design, given what's working and what I'm envisioning, what might be possible, and then take a step, because it has to be action. That GPS does not work unless you're in motion. And so whether it's for an individual or a whole group, please consider an appreciative approach, a positive, raising the value of, focusing on what you want approach to life. That will help us move really quickly. Never denying the problems, but what we're doing is we're switching them. We're translating them in a way that we're going to take care of the problems all along the way, and we do.
Well, and what's so great is when people are engaged in this kind of an activity, they feel that they have ownership to things turning around because they're giving their input.
Yes, that's what you have, exactly. That's why the action takes off so fast. And some of the things, I'm just amazed how that people take this and then in their homes, they begin asking a different question, like of their children, like, well, did you do better in that class that you've been having such trouble? Did you do your homework? And instead it's like, hey, what went well at school today? And did you have one thing that you learned and it could even be in the class that they were having difficulty, one thing and usually there's something, and you're like, well, I could see the blackboard, or I understood the teacher when she said this one thing. Great! Rather than focusing on the negative. And what we're seeing is people then move toward that. If I told you, okay, get an image of your best friend, and I don't know where your best friend is, and just imagine getting to go spend time with your best friend and feel it in every sense. Okay, that's pretty positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
For those listening, and you and me, I'm already there too as I was speaking it. So I'm moving this a little fast, but now if I told you now, think of your worst school experience and that teacher where you just couldn't understand or you could never do anything right. Now get that image. Now go towards that. People are like, will talk about things, they'll feel stuckness in their body, their throat sort of clamming up, even their hands or their feet kind of muscles crunching up because there's a resistance. And so it's like what we were talking about, like we don't want to drive with our brakes on. It hurts the vehicle eventually, Instead, we want to see what is and then go towards what we want to create.
Well, and what a beautiful place that is, because you get people that then get more excited, they're engaged, they feel like they have ownership, they're making a difference, and then comes the fulfillment.
Yes, exactly. It is, yes. I haven't found it a single reason of not to do this. So this process is used by thousands of people all over the world, and even in really desperate places. For example, some people will call it positive deviancy. So in one of the places in Southeast Asia where it's just horrific, the malnutrition, the number of childhood infant deaths is really high. And people have gone in there and studied the problem, and then a group of people said, why don't we look at which children aren't dying? They seem to be thriving in spite of the fact they don't have a couple of meals a day. I'm not talking about 3. I'm talking about, just a couple. And they went in, and what did they find? They found some kids that looked healthy, and then began watching them, and then they went to their homes and began talking to, generally it was the mothers, and what they found in this southeast country was that the mothers were finding things like seagrass, seaweed, river grass. They were finding all sorts of things and feeding their kids, anything and everything, bugs, different things. Now, some of these were taboo for the culture to do, but these mothers were said, forget the belief system, I want a healthy child. And they were giving this as food. And so rather than having, experts come in and say, oh, listen, instead they asked then these mothers, very cautious, careful way, began to teach other mothers, and actually what they began to turn around the malnutrition rate and the infant mortality rate, because it was already in the people in the system there, the know-how. So what I'm trying to convey to people is that you can be in the most difficult situation, and I honor that. I've been in those too. And you do what you need to do, but just always know there is a way. And everything does change, and you can expedite that, and you can choose that. There is a way. And I guess that's really it. For me, it's just we get to choose that. So we get to choose to be appreciative, or we can choose to be problem-focused. We can choose to focus on joy and how do we do that, and literally the steps we take, or we can choose to focus on, the negative. And sometimes I focus on the negative, but I don't stay there very long because
there's a choice.
Yeah, there's a choice.
Yeah, you can see the choice, and my goodness, I could talk to you for hours and listen to, just have discussion with you and listen to your wisdom in regards to, especially when it comes to positive psychology and appreciative inquiry. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your work, and how they can connect with you, and of course get your book, The 4 Sacred Gifts?
Yes. Well, I'm going to give you 2 places, which I know is tough, Marianne. So hopefully you'll put that in your written thing. So
we're fine with 2.
That's great. Okay. For the book, to learn more about the indigenous wisdom and then how it relates into the modern world. That's what it's for current times, because indigenous people aren't gone. We're here. Go to FourSacredGifts.com, F-O-U-R, sacredgifts.com, to learn more about specifically appreciative inquiry and the different ways it can be used for individual coaching, for huge, large system, global system change. Go to SanchezTennis.com. That is SANCHEZ, tennis, just like the game, TENNIS.com, SanchezTennis.com. And I'm not in sportswear, Marianne, but that is my partner in life and in work's name. That's my husband. And so it's SanchezTennis.com.
It's a catchy name. Everyone can learn, can spell that. It's easy to get to.
Yes. His name is easier to spell than mine. But it's a little bit of a marketing confusion because I think it's sportswear. But it's SanchezTennis.com, and you can learn a lot more about our programs on appreciative inquiry, on how to use a positive psychology, a positive approach to create positive change. Let's move from positive image to positive action. We need it today more than ever.
Well, and before we go, we have just a couple minutes here for some final thoughts. And what final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with today?
What I want to say is that, again, there are a lot of divisiveness that's happening, not only in our communities, maybe in our families, in our nation and around the world. Whether we're talking about the economy, the environment, politics, go on society, on and on. However, we do have the answer. And I believe that it's life itself that's calling us, wherever it is your gift to bring, whether it's an organization, in your family, in the community, it's time. We so need it. So I do hope that Marianne and my conversation about a positive approach to change, positive image to positive action, excites you, inspires you to take that step to bring your gifts.
Well, I'm excited about it, and of course, love your book, The Four Sacred Gifts. I think it's a fabulous book, and everyone needs to go pick up their copy. And, Dr. Anita, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne, and thanks to all of your listeners.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sanchez. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you and not only talk about your book, The Four Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times, but also positive image to positive action. Again, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Anita Sanchez, you can at her website, anita-sanchez.com. You can see all the resources that she has there and, of course, become part of her community and also pick up The Four Sacred Gifts. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.